The Process of Muscle Contraction by Alec, Lucy, Jeff, and Megan. Step 1. The muscle begins in a resting state. The brain then sends action potential signals to the muscle to stimulate the muscle contraction. The axons of a nerve cell that are based on the spinal cord attach to individual muscle fibers, forming a neuromuscular junction. From that, an action potential passes down the nerve cell. In doing so, ions are released, allowing acetylcholine, also known as ACH, to become present in the motor end plate. Because of this, synaptic vesicles are filled with ACH. The acetylcholine is then released from the synaptic knob by exocytosis and into the synaptic cleft. Acetylcholine is picked up by the receptors on the motor end plate of the skeletal muscle, where calcium and potassium channels open, allowing calcium ions to enter the muscle fiber. Step 2. In the next step, we will be discussing myosin, actin, tropomyosin, troponin, adenosine triphosphate, also known as ATP, adenosine diphosphate, also known as ADP, phosphate, calcium, and magnesium. The myosin crossbridge attaches to the actin myofilament. This then leads to the working stroke, which is where the myosin head moves from a high energy state to a low energy state, pulling on the actin filament. Adenosine triphosphate attaches to the myosin, which detaches from the crossbridge, which then splits into adenosine diphosphate and phosphate. This process is continually repeated until the muscle is contracted. Step 3. Now we will be taking a deeper look into the myofilament of the myofibril, which is part of the myofiber, which is then part of the fascicle that makes up the whole cell. Striated muscle contracts when nerve impulses trigger filaments of actin and myosin. The filaments overlap in segments known as sarcomeres. When the Z disc extends inward, it overlaps myosin filaments. In relaxed muscle, the thick and thin filaments only slightly overlap. In contracted muscle, the overlap is much greater. Actin slides over thick filaments, reducing the length of the muscle. If you take a look at the top picture, that is relaxed muscle. The middle picture is somewhat contracted muscle, and the bottom picture is completely contracted muscle. Step 4. Step 4 is a summary of the entire process of muscle contraction. In conclusion, action potential is generated along the sarcolemma and down the T-tubules, which then triggers the calcium released from the end terminal. The calcium ions then attach to troponin, which changes the shape, and then the actin active sites are exposed. The myosin attaches and detaches in a cycle, pulling the filaments closer to the center of the sarcomere, releasing energy by ATP hydrolysis, which starts the process. Calcium is then removed by the active transport after the action potential ends, which then results in the end process where tropomyosin blockage occurs. This is where the contraction ends and the muscle fiber relaxes.